As I said to some preachers I preached with this week, that if we go back, and maybe mentioned it here before, if we go back to Bible language and call sin what it really is, instead of saying somebody, you say that girl's a whore, you say, no, she's a call girl. Huh? You say about a dirty, filthy sodomite. Oh, no, he's not a sodomite, he's just gay. There's nobody wicked, they're just weak. There's no iniquity, it's just infirmity. No backsliders anymore. That's a dirty word. A lot of people out of fellowship, but backsliders, you don't use that word. This is what sin does. You either get rid of it or it gets rid of you. Now, if you die with sin in your heart, you won't go to a third-class heaven because there isn't one. You'll go right bang to hell itself. You know, I'm convinced of this. We do not preach salvation in the day in which we live. We preach forgiveness. You want to be forgiven? Shed a few tears. Get your name in the book of life. Get your name on the waiting list for a crown. You get a ticket to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Rule over 5 cities. And a few other benefits. Let me tell you this, listen, with all the power I have, Jesus did not come into the world to make bad men good. He came into the world to make dead men live. Not to make bad men good, to make dead men live. Christianity is the only religion in the world, whether you have 1,000 or 2,000, it is the only religion in the world where a man's God comes and lives inside of him. You can give up your lousy smoking and rotten women and drinking and not be regenerate. You see, we're awfully easy on the sin problem. You see, you're one of God's little children, and if you commit adultery, it doesn't matter too much. But if your neighbor does, he'll go to hellfire because he didn't happen to be a member of a church and say he was saved. We need to change our tone about sin. You read 1 John and see what John says about it. He says that he, the man that is born of God, doth not, he does not commit sin. And I remember when Nara Brown said to me, been talking with a woman, and she said, my favorite scripture is, when we sin, we have an advocate. He said, would you find it for me? And she said, it's in John. Oh, I see. Well, could you find it for me? Yeah, it's in the first epistle of John. Read it. If we sin, we have what? Oh, I thought it said when we sin. No, it doesn't say when we sin. It says if we sin. Sinning is not normal in the Christian life. It's abnormal. It's abnormal. You see, Jesus didn't say if ye fast, he said when ye fast. But the scripture here doesn't say when we sin, it says if by some reason you slip. What's the difference between a man committing an adultery if he's a Christian, or stealing if he's a Christian, or lying if he's a Christian, to the sin and adultery and lying of a man in the street? There is no difference. There is a difference, not in the deed, not how diabolical it is. The difference is this, that when a Christian does it, when he's been caught in temptation and does it, he flees to Christ for mercy. He goes with a broken heart. You see, the thing that got to the heart of God with David was this. He says, I've got a broken and a contrite heart. Did you ever have a broken heart? It's worse than a broken limb. It's worse than a broken business deal. It's worse than a broken friendship, a broken heart. My sin, my sin, my sin put him on the tree. And I hate it. I loathe it. Man alive, we're far beyond Sodom and Gomorrah, so they never had any Bible. Sodom didn't have a preacher. Sodom didn't have a church. Sodom didn't have a Bible. Sodom had nobody to pray, but it perished. How long do you think God's going to put up with our sin? But I'll tell you what, God said sin made such havoc of this world that he loved, that he's not going to let one person get into heaven with one spot of sin. And you're not going to get rid of it in the grave, so you better get rid of it now. I want to be saved from sin. I want to be a God-directed man, that in the life I have I may live to the glory of God. For the devil's got enough people bringing glory to his rotten name.